Hey there, you awesome, amazing people who are alive right now at this incredible time. How are you this day? This is Darren DOG here, coming to you from a new world for the first time. 2 weeks ago today, this country was placed into an entirely new situation, as were we all, and many have rushed to fill the space with their interpretations and their takes, and I have paused to look at the data, to look at my feelings, to look at what I know and what I think I know, and to look at what others know or think they know, to get myself into the right space before reaching out to you, to connect with you, to share what I can that will hopefully be useful, liberating, empowering, uplifting at a time when there's so much of the opposite going around. And despite me talking now with words of hope and aspiration, when in the world around things look to be maybe not so bright, I want you to know that I am not neglecting any of the things that you may be concerned about. I have looked extensively at many of the tales and interpretations of what is happening around us in the world, and I am not neglecting any details when I bring to you the good news that I have to bring to you this day. But to show you that I am not neglecting such details, I need to acknowledge some of the stories that are out there and meet you in the tales that you may find yourself enthralled by, as I seek to, bring about a change to this world for the better, as I'm sure that's what we're all seeking to do in our own ways, and perhaps all of us trying to tread carefully that the road to hell, which is allegedly paved with good intentions, is not where we find ourselves going with the good intentions of some of us and those in the world. Anyway, enough meandering. Hello there. Goodness me, what a time, eh? Goodness me, what things going on. So many pieces of information to pick through, so many perspectives, so many experts, so many armchair experts, so much selective data, so much fear of death, fear of each other, fear of the Illuminati and the globalists, fear of evil. Oh my goodness. Love as well, there's a good amount of love moving around as people are finding the love within them. There's a lot of good going on, as well as some shady stuff. So this is my first time trying a sort of podcast style narrative here, so I hope you can bear with me as I try and transform my usual forms of expression, and I'll tell you why. Because the reason I've sat and taken 2 weeks and waited until this New Year's Day, traditional New Year's, is April the 6th. Only the banks now celebrate it, and they seem to be doing all right, eh? Some of you may remember a few years ago I was talking about moving New Year's Day to re-celebrate it now, when the spring energy is surging, to plant our seeds and our dreams and our intentions now, when the energy of the world is just waking up. And that is perhaps where I broadcast to you from this day, is from the hopeful surges of spring, despite us all, or most of us, enjoying it from the comfort of our homes. So, I want to share with you my interpretation of not only what is going on with coronavirus and the various other manoeuvres in the world, but also a positive solution that can be found with one amongst this. There will be some complexity, and there will be some sections in this tale that I bring, but I will try to bring to you new stuff that you have not heard elsewhere, angles and perspectives you may not have heard. There may be a one or two repeats, but otherwise I seek to bring to you something different. And I also seek to bring to you solutions and goodness in amongst the pinching we find ourselves in, and opportunities that lie in amongst the challenges. So there is a lot I wish to share. This particular episode is dedicated to my truther friends. This does not mean that it is not for others as well. It's just that there are angles that I would cover with others, say for example secular scientists, that I will not be covering in this episode, or perhaps New Agers that I would not be covering in this particular section. If there are secular scientists and New Agers and amongst the truthers listening to this, then welcome. You will find stuff in here for you anyway, but what I mean is I will do separate broadcasts for different sort of stories that people find themselves enthralled in at the moment, because there are many playing out around us right now, because there are many players in the world, there are many factions, there are many powers moving, and just because you have attached to one, it doesn't mean the others do not also have validity or goodness in them. And is there one overarching true story that is above them all? I don't know, maybe there is. Well, I have a theory on that, but that's not for now. No, what I want to speak to you about now is Corona, and the change, the great spell that has fallen upon the land, a great enchantment has fallen upon the land and upon the people. How has it been so well cast? How are so many willing to give up so much, to cry out for house arrest? How have we got into such a situation? That's why this one is dedicated to the truthers, because many secular scientists will accept that this is a plausible situation to find yourselves in. And I can understand why. We will address that in this episode, in this very, very section as we move through this tale. So yes, as many of you will know from my previous and other work, that we spell all our words because all our words are really spells. And spells can be used to uplift and enlighten and make you feel good and see new things. But they can also be used to make you treat yourself terribly, feel bad about yourself, and to inhibit your otherwise amazing radiance and potential. And of course, what we're dealing with here are spells that cause us to voluntarily give up our freedom, sometimes beyond reason. And that's the big question over the corona thing, isn't it? Is the response reasonable against the risk? And today I am going to look at why the answer has come across as yes for many, without it needing to mean that there is some overarching conspiratorial machinator behind it all. That is not to say that there are not powers that are moving for power at this time, exploiting the opportunities. Yes, that is happening, but that has always happened. And I suppose the point of this overall episode is to say to you, if, knowing this was coming, as many of you will have done, what good has knowing served you? What good has it done you? Maybe you're a bit less shocked about it than others. But I think biologically you're probably as shocked by the effects in our culture. I certainly am, despite knowing something like this was coming. But the question is, what good has knowing done? Let's look at the guy that kind of has the greatest press for having known this was going to come upon us, and that is the man David Icke. Now, I have a great respect for David and the work that he has done. However, he has been broadcasting recently from exactly the same pickle as the rest of us. And so there's a man who has amassed a great following. He has filled Wembley. He has written armloads of books and sold by the however many million copies. He has amassed, therefore, some resource and some capacity to perhaps, one would think, buffer himself in some way from what he has seen, as he says himself, coming for 30 years. And yet, no, there he is in exactly the same situation as the rest of us, unable to see his family and stuck in his house. And he's basically there Sitting there, sitting there going, see, I saw this coming. I was right. Yeah, you were right as you saw the invisible bars clang around you just like the rest of us. So what good did knowing do you? What good did it do you? And I've enjoyed a lot of David's work over the years, not all of it, but there's been some really good stuff in there. But as he always said himself, he was a reporter and is a reporter. He uncovered a story and gave it to the world, and people were treating him like the solutions guy, and he was never a solutions guy. And that's not to take away from what he is. But there was misplaced power placed in him that has allowed everybody who had opportunity to plan to end up in the same pickle. What good did knowing do? So the reason I say that is to try to somewhat stem the fervour of the continued search for new twists and turns in that great tale, that aspect of the great story around us. Because we are in a new world, there's no doubt about it. All of us can feel the difference of the predicament that we find ourselves in. This is truly unprecedented. We are under a genuine, willful, voluntary, temporary, allegedly, police state situation, with the police enabled to fine people for being out of their house without reasonable excuse. This is an unprecedented situation. The state has never done this, where it has legally inserted itself between family members and between lovers, between people and their religions and their congregations and their livelihoods, and given them no choice. Well, obviously greatly limited their choice. This is unprecedented. For the state to insert itself in between relationships, it's perhaps and in between families, is perhaps the ultimate divide and rule potential move in non-benevolent hands. In benevolent hands, obviously, it's fine for a short while, but in non-benevolent hands, this is a very great power to voluntarily give away, and leaves us all with ourselves very much in the worlds of our creation, in the worlds of the consequence of our choices. You find yourself at home with the consequence of your choices. We all do. And so my question is, if up until this time, knowing this was coming has not enabled you to stop it from happening, what good will continuing to delve into the intricacies of those stories of those that have wealth, resource and power and what they do? What good will that do when you are talking about them rather than moving in your own way and doing your own thing and doing what you can within the context of your story rather than just repeating theirs? Because in a way, so many truthers became exactly what David Icke accused news reporters of being, and that is they became repeaters. So many of you wonderful, beautiful truthers out there became repeaters of a tales of totalitarian horror. Now I know many of you, not all of you, but many of you believe that you have manifesting power. Many of you believe that you're somehow involved in creating a future reality, either with your actions or with your beliefs or with your intention. And really what has happened is David has taken the awareness of some of the brightest, most awakened people, who others would call cracked, but many would say you have broken free of aspects of social conditioning, aspects of it, into a state of perception that lets you see some stuff. And what has happened then is, so that means you've acquired a level of potential and power, and that manifesting power has been taken and focused on a story of a totalitarian endgame rather than the vision of what lies beyond it. rather than a story of hope and victory and possibility that lies beyond the moves of these people. And instead, the awareness of these amazing co-creative people, these bright sparks with great manifesting power, has been focused on a totalitarian endgame. And now the great spell that has been cast upon the land has been using that very same principle by getting everybody to focus on this thing we call corona. And then using a whole host of different threads, which I'll talk about in a bit, perception of authority, actual authority, etc. The power of the spell was woven, and a new reality, a new world was formed within the space of just a few days. And in a way, I wonder what role so many of the awakened have, or so-called awakened, have played with their, and my own sort of gleeful, almost mental masturbatory joy at somehow getting insider knowledge about what was coming, about the manoeuvres of the powerful or the evil, and knowing what they were doing, while not necessarily maybe being as active oneself as one could be. And I'm speaking of myself here as well, because I find myself in a similar pickle, and realising moves that I could have taken had I been more courageous in the past, and now seeing the consequences of that, But then this was all meant to happen. This is fine. This is okay. As we'll see, there's many positives in this, and the story is unfurling as it should, and power and victory does indeed lie around the corner, certainly for some. Now, my point being though is, look at this amazing manifesting thought power of all these people being directed on this horrible end story that David foretold, rather than the great victory beyond. And David, fair play to him. He did say, look, you need to wake up and get acting, but he never said he knew what action to take. And so, for that I give him full credit. It's others that misinterpreted his role and then adulated him as a solutions guy rather than the information guy, within reason, of course. So anyway, I only mention David so much, not because he's that important a character to me, but I know he is very well respected. And as I said, this particular stream is for the truther group of friends of mine and the wider truth movement, and I know everybody in the truth scene knows of David and respects what he has done, because of course he did see this coming. Fair play to the guy. How he knew, different question, but fair play to the guy, he saw it. So anyway, and so obviously part of the solution here is how we then use our capacities to focus on a different solution, but the point is about getting enough momentum behind a solution. But anyway, we'll get onto that later. For now, I want to look at what is going on and why it has had the effect that it has had as being such a powerful spell that people are willing to not see their lovers, not see their families. People are willing to be locked up, well, not willing to be, but they're forced to be locked up with their abusers. Children, abused kids are now locked up with their abusers. Abused partners are locked up with their abusers. Children are unable to play with each other. They're unable to go and learn, all because of the power of this fear response to this bug, or the media hype about this bug. Okay, goodness me. One of the reasons it's taken me 2 weeks to do this is because of how many threads there are involved in this. It's enabled such a manoeuvre of perceived authority to be so effective. So, yeah, where to begin? Okay. So as I said, I want to say things that others haven't said. So I know all of you listening will know that the deaths are not adding up to what one would expect yet anyway. I know many of you will know that the lockdown is clearly not concomitant with the risk at heart. But let's also remember that the sort of lefty press, left-leaning press, which is always about asking for more government. You know, when the lefty press was very much asking for a lockdown situation, perhaps a bit prematurely, and the government was very much responding to media agitation, but also to other things, which is exactly what I want to say. So let's get on with the point. So, how have so many people been able to be duped into living into such an inhumane conditions? Well, what has happened is that we have had the lens of focus of our values shifted, so that we are now looking at the most limited medical resource of all, which is the ICU bed and a ventilator, and we have centralised the experience of the ICU nurse and doctor over anybody else's experience. And when we combine that impression with another thing that I'm going to mention in a moment, we have very powerful effect. So you can have an ICU nurse or doctor going, "Oh my goodness me, there's 5 people out there in the hallway, I've only got 3 beds, please don't put me in this position, please all of you stay home, I don't want to have to choose, please don't do this to me, stay at home everyone, all children, don't go out and play on the playgrounds, everybody don't, blah blah blah," you get the point. So, because, I mean, of course, that's a real human situation to be in there, who would want to be in that position? But that is the position of the surgeon in times of crisis, in the same way as the position of the payroll clerk at New Year End is stressful, and they'll be saying, don't phone us, well, we're too busy, or the soldier on the front line, "Oh, Brian's crying and his guts just got splattered everywhere, I don't know what to do, please sign the peace treaty. It depends on whose experience we're centralising at any time as to what reaction is being asked for. Right now we could go and ask a whole bunch of business owners about how they're doing, and they'll be crying, "Please lift the lockdown, please, I'm going bankrupt, all my staff are going to get laid off, please, my family are stressed, I'm stressed, I can't pay the rent, I can't pay the mortgage, we're going to be homeless, I don't know what I'm going to do after this, I don't know how to restart the business, please." But you see, nobody's listening to those voices at the minute because we've centralised the experience of the ITU nurse and the vulnerable people who are catching this form of the flu. Now, so we've got that. So that's one aspect, is the refocusing of whose experience we're centralising. So we've gone from centralising the experience of the transers and the feminists and the whoever else, and whose everybody's behaviour was being asked to be modified to cater to these people pleading for the world to change because of how bad their experience was. We've now moved that lens to the experience of the ITU nurse and the ITU doctor. Now, I'll be honest with you, my sister is an ICU nurse. And even before all this kicked off, their job was never pleasant. It's never a nice job. A lot of people that go into ICU die anyway. They get to see the messiest of the messy in there. It's not a nice place at the best of times. And this obviously does up the ante of what they're having to face. However, it's about the proportionateness of the response here. But what we're talking about here is why the spell why it was so effective, and it's about this so evoking the human reaction to that person, obviously, and their experience. Next, we have the vulnerable. Now, who doesn't want to help the vulnerable? When we cast them into the spell, nobody wants to say they don't want to help the vulnerable. I mean, that doesn't sound very good, does it? But when we look at the statistics, the majority of people that are dying from this particular strain were people in their 80s or otherwise people with underlying conditions. Now, unless you are claiming this is a bioweapon, then what we are seeing here is possibly one of the most gentle pandemics ever. Now, I know it's not nice for the people that are dying or coughing their guts up. I appreciate that. I didn't make this bug up. Nature did, and but the point is, it's a part of our species. It's a part of all species. Many people have written about how this overreaction, and why we're also willing to do with it is because of our fear of death and our desire to cling on to life at any cost. And really what nature is showing us here is that, if we have underlying conditions that are slight vulnerabilities, then we can indeed be prone to slightly stronger than normal strains of things like the flu. It's just nature, it's just natural selection. It's not it's not savagery, it's not like MERS or something like that would take out 35% of anybody. This is a really gentle pandemic, and I say that with the utmost consideration. Okay, so where was I there? Yeah, ITU nurses. Yeah, we centralise their experience, so that's one aspect of it, evoking our human reaction to not wanting to put them in the position of choosing who gets a ventilator and leaving people to die in the hallways or whatever it might be. But then we combine that with, and this is the real thing, this is the big point I want to make, about what's slightly different here, is that the reason we are all living in the way that we are now is not because some tyrant has decided that that we should all be standing 2 meters apart and not getting out. Okay, this is although maybe they did, I don't know. But this is but it's not just that. Basically, this is a computer decision. This is AI. It's an artificial intelligence decision, people. Okay, so what I mean by that is these are computer models that have decided that we should live like this. And the planned pulsings of lockdowns and let-outs have all been from the perceived authority of the almighty graph and chart and computer model that says we should do this. Now let's remember, this is not real intelligence. This is not living intelligence. This is artificial intelligence. And what we have done is we have said to our computers, show us the way to minimize the virus spread. So that's the graph we're looking at. We want to minimize viral spread. And so the computer has said, hey, look, this is how you minimize viral spread. And they've looked at all the variations and whatnot, and the ultimate way of not spreading the virus is, of course, to not go out and not have, and to minimize any interaction. However, living intelligence does not have only one graph. There is the graph of mental well-being, the graph of emotional well-being, the graph of productivity, the graph. So when people talk about the economy, okay, the economy is not just money, people. The economy is livelihoods. It is sustenance for the families that rely on those businesses operating. When we talk about the economy, we talk about salaries and people's ability to shelter and feed their families. So when we make a decision, as we are right now, which is to literally stop people from trading and engaging in their business practices, is that we are creating on that graph of their well-being, we are creating an existential vulnerability at some point in the near future, if this situation continues. An artificial intelligence which has been primed to look at viral spread is not looking at that graph. Okay, it's not looking at the graph of the abusers left, the abused left with abusers. It's not looking at the only children that don't have friends to play with now, and that don't have a playground to play on, and that live in a flat and don't have toys to play on and can't exercise. The artificial intelligence is not looking at that. And because the people we have elected lack the personal authority in themselves to stand up against the might of the national voice and Twitter storms and all this sort of stuff, they're relying on the computer because they don't want to take it on their own shoulders, because the flack that comes from all directions is astronomical. So it's easier to say, look, this is what the computer said. And then they don't have to bear it, and who can blame them? The shitstorm people get put through just by having an opinion and standing on it is absolutely incredible now, because everybody's got access to a keyboard. It doesn't matter what intelligence you are. It doesn't matter how what level of ignorance you have. Just even if you think you're not, you can bombard these people with all sorts of attacks. So can you really blame them for saying, well, I'm going to look to an external authority than myself? And so what people are doing is that they are looking at the computers, which means it's artificial intelligence. Now, don't get me wrong, we've been living under artificial intelligence for a while, because really living by centralizing economic growth as the graph of whether we were thriving or not as a civilization is an artificial intelligence decision that had many downstream consequences affecting the well-being and resource distribution of many. It's just this is a more overt form of artificial intelligence. And it will continue to be this way because of people lauding and celebrating the kind of cleverness of the computer. And this brings me to the next thread of the power of the spell. And that is, I like to call them the heads of the beast. You can call them whatever you like, but I like to call them the heads of the beast. So all the heads of the beast have been involved in casting this spell. We've got government, we've got the medical establishment, we've got the military and the police, we've got the educational establishments. These are all, and the media. These are all moving in concert in response to the methods that were devised during Event 201. If you don't know about Event 201, go and look it up. There's plenty out there on it. I'm not going to repeat it, but Event 201 is why the governments and the other bodies have worked together so seamlessly on this occasion to bring about such a massive change in our culture and our civilization so rapidly. Event 201 was where the methodology was clearly devised and practiced. So anyway, I deviated too much. I've lost my thread. I knew it was going to happen. Okay, let's backtrack. Now, where was I? Give me a moment to regather myself. To stare at the window at the beautiful spring energy out there. That's right, it's New Year's Day. Yes, indeed. And here we are trying to change the tune from how I would normally talk about these things, and we're going to make a massive swing to the positive in a bit, but the reason I am saying all this is to let you know how much I have thought about it. So there is something else to add though as well, because me saying this does not mean that there are not globalists moving for power at the moment. Yes, they are. But the reason so many other people have been swept up in this is because of the authority of the computer, the authority of the artificial intelligence. That's what's got so many people on board. There is a reasonableness to it if the risk is, of course, warranted. Of course it is. If there was some highly contagious, very deadly disease out there, very deadly, of course it makes sense not to go out. Goodness me. But the question is it that deadly? Now, anyway, this spell that's been cast, how glorious, all these heads of the beast. The one missing head that doesn't seem to be at play here is the head of religion and belief. But I would say that actually that is the very thread that has made this spell so effective on so many, and that is the thread of belief. And it's the belief in science, the belief in the power and the authority of the scientist. And what we have done is we have centralized the authority of certain selective individual scientists and decided to say that they are the authority on this matter. And so they get to tell the story of how we respond, and they get to tell the story of what it is that we are facing, despite the fact that we might be able to assess the evidence ourselves as well. So this is why we're seeing different responses in places like Sweden and Belarus compared to other nations, is because different experts think different things are appropriate for the level of risk that's ahead of us. But what we are dealing with, where you have allegedly 3 billion people now under house arrest, semi-voluntary house arrest around the globe. That's almost half the population of the planet now seemingly under house arrest, and many of them unable to go out and even exercise now. That is an extreme position, people, and the reason this is enabled to be happening is because of the power of the belief in science. Okay, the belief in the authority of these scientists and the graphs and the computers, that people are willing to live in a computer simulation. And what has happened is that in a very real way, loads of you are into the Matrix, I know that, you've all seen it, haven't you? You're all pilled. But the thing that we are missing is, in a very real way, a few weeks ago, the real Matrix was switched on. And that is, our lives were moved and adapted to be living as a computer simulation says we should. So when you are standing outside the supermarket, in a queue that stretches around the car park like something out of a badly coded Sims game, and as you shuffle from one piece of tape to the next, feeling like you're in some kind of computer game, it's because you are a computer said that is what we should do, and we have taken real life, snapped the fingers of the few who believe in computers and science, and all of a sudden we are now living as a computer simulation, very much like the real Matrix now. So people like Elon Musk and stuff were saying a while ago, hey, we live in a computer simulation. No, we did not. We lived on planet Earth with a technological society. Now we are living in a computer simulation. And it is the authority of the computer that is allowing so many people to be taken in by this. And now with the right to gather banned in numbers more than 2, which is shocking, absolutely shocking, but now that has been banned, there is very little one can do about it, it seems. But don't worry, solutions are ahead. We'll get to them. Don't worry, it's too exciting. These are exciting times. We're painting the doom picture just so that I can show you that I know where you're coming from, my dear brother and sister. But the point is not to dwell on the machinations of these people who are acting on their fears. That's what they're doing. Bill Gates and Tony Blair et al. Are acting on their fears. These are the globalists. They're who are moving. We're going to get onto them in a minute. But just because they are moving, it doesn't mean that we can't. Even though we can't physically, we can in other ways. And don't worry, we are not alone. That is for sure. So anyway, this brings us on to what this is really about. Okay, so the spell has been cast. It's been cast very effectively. It's been cast using a combination of authorities and perceived authorities. That's what's allowed so many to be taken in by it and to willfully, voluntarily do it. And what we are seeing happening during this great first phase experiment of the globalists' attempted takeover of the world, is an activation of the Agent Smiths. So if you remember in the Matrix, Agent Smith was any individual who would turn into this agent or state. Well, many of my clients already know I've been talking about Agent Smith as an interesting character that pop up in our lives as people who try to inhibit our growth as we're trying to make changes. Well, now Agent Smith has become a real thing where people are almost on the verge of being asked to grass on their neighbours if they're seen being out. And we're having voluntary Agent Smiths pop up all over the place. People willingly wanting to dob their neighbours in or grass on them for being earthlings, indigenous beings of the planet that want to actually just be in their gardens or something like that. So, my goodness me, what a pickle. This is it. So it's almost like maybe this is the real zombie apocalypse, people. It just got switched on a few weeks ago. Agent Smith has been activated, and now the game begins. But this is all good because this is the great story unfurling before our very eyes. So I mentioned the globalists before. I think my screen has been recording here. I hope it has. In case it hasn't, I'm just on Google here, YouTube, looking up something. And it is Sky News climate budget is what I've typed into the search. And I'm clicking on, and the top thing is... So this is obviously my second point. The first point is AI is one of the big things. Now my second point is what is going on here. Okay, so this is now I'm trying to give a different take on what is going on now. I know many of you will have a totalitarian image of some kind. I want to try and break that up a little bit so it's not seen as some kind of monolithic single entity, which is how some people kind of perceive a so-called Illuminati or ruling group. It isn't. It's a range of interested parties who may have made agreements to maneuver together in very natural moves for power. I mean, this is just how life has always operated, as people see opportunities for growth and power for the world to be moulded the way they want it to be, and they make moves that way. We all do it from, moulding our garden, and these are just people that are doing it on a national and political and international level. Don't make them more than what they are, people. They're just people with some resources that are trying to enact a plan. Don't let them be the only ones. I have my plans. So top result is will the budget tackle climate change? Okay, that's the title. And the thumbnail for this video is A New Climate. Now you might be thinking, why on earth is he directing me here? We're talking about Corona. Well, I'm drawing your attention to this because this is an unprecedented video clip. It's unprecedented in the history of everness ever in terms of the movements in plain sight of the kind of factions that we're talking about here. So let me just click on this video. We're going to watch 10 seconds of it or so. So here we go.
Chancellor, will the budget still be going ahead?
It's a critical year for tackling climate change.
A critical year for tackling climate change.
To reaching net zero by 2050.
Okay.
How much will coronavirus impact?
Boom, there we go. Did you see that? So I'm going to backtrack there. Here we go. So we go back and we see here the Chancellor coming out of his house with the traditional red budget file. We hear the words along the lines of, will the budget tackle climate? Something along those lines.
Zero by 2050.
Intention of reaching net zero by 2050. And the Chancellor is now gone behind a car. And you can see him just walking normally. There's no break in his stride whatsoever. There's no pause there. And as he emerges from the car, the red file is now green. Okay, the red file is now green. This is major. This is Sky News, allegedly live broadcast that has been doctored with at the highest level. Neither Sky News nor the Chancellor have given comment on that, despite the fact that the comments are full of people talking about the red folder and the green folder. This is in plain sight, in your face, in a way like never before on mainstream international news at prime time, on something that every financially interested party of any merit is looking at. Now, loads of people thought that this was just a sign of subliminal programming and play and in-your-faceness. However, I would like to give you a different take on that, my friends. This was on the 9th of March. The 10th of March is when Italy went into full lockdown. I am suggesting to you that this was a signal, red to green, for go, a message between the globalists, the interested parties, to either get out now, as in wherever they were, to safe ground, or go, go, go. We're going. It's time. Let's move it. We've tested the ground. People are going to go for it. Do it, do it, do it, lockdown now, do it, let's get them. You know, and to what end, we'll get to that in a moment, but I'm bringing this in as to show you that this is where I think the big move began. This was the signal between the parties that are moving for basically a one world government out of this. Now, Gordon Brown, within days of this event, started talking, like within days of the UK lockdown. So this one in the UK was 2 weeks before UK lockdown, 1 day before Italian lockdown. 2 weeks to the day before UK lockdown, 1 day before Italian lockdown. This was a signal, my friends. That's what I'm suggesting to you. And it was so that it was done in plain sight so that everybody would see. You know, that's so obvious. Everybody can see that something wild happened there. And this is still available, it's still up there, still with no commentary from Sky News or the Chancellor about what exactly happened there and what that was about. So who was moving and why? Well, what's happened since the lockdown has happened is we can see which players are moved by the ones that were already prepared. And so within a short time of our lockdown in the UK, which is essentially a crashing of economic activity, beyond sustenance, basically. And those that were just fortunate enough to have an industry that's not affected by it. Not long after we locked down, we had Gordon Brown talking about a one world government to handle the crisis. A world government, temporary, of course. Not long after, we've got Tony Blair, okay? Tony Blair, of all people, telling us that his organisation has 250 people in 25 teams already trained to help governments reform and reorganise to meet with the crisis. And obviously all these governments will be reforming in the same way, in the same methods and processes that, of course, the Tony Blair Foundation has ready at hand to help them. Thanks, Tony. Thanks, Tony, for your readiness. And then we've got Bill Gates, a computer guy, all of a sudden the world expert on viruses and vaccines. Well, you know, I must admit, I do like to call him Bill Pestilence Gates, you know. Just between you and me. It's my friendly name for him. So Bill Pestilence Gates, although he means well, kind of, in his own weird way, is of course the one that's now telling everybody on mainstream American morning news that mass gatherings, optional mass gatherings like sports, may never return without mass vaccination. Well, who said you get to say, Bill? Who said you get to say? But guess what? His people are already talking with the American government from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, are already talking with the American government to help them devise what coming out of lockdown will look like in terms of which things will get opened up and when and how. Because Bill was just ready. Thanks, Bill, for your preparedness. And this stuff was all prepared. Been getting ready for a while, but Event 201 did help with the preparedness for this. But these people have been ready to move. They've got teams ready to help these organisations, these governments, reform and decide how to tackle the crisis. So these are the players that are moving, responding to this signal. As David Icke may have said, they want a world war government. Well, do you know what? There are some plausible reasons why they might want to do that, and they're operating from fear. Tony's afraid of uprisings, and people dying in the Middle East, I know he's made some scumbag decisions, but, we can't demonise everybody, even if he is a demon, I don't know if he is or not, but for me, for what I've seen, I can see that he's just coming from his fear, and he just wants to be in control. It's the same as Bill. He's afraid of bugs. All right, Bill, you're afraid of bugs. I think he's also afraid of the population size, to be honest. But I'm giving these people the benefit of the doubt, folks, okay? You can think of them what you will, but I'm trying to humanise them as well and to see that these are different interested parties. So obviously this was called A New Climate, this news episode that this signal was given in. And it was saying, will it tackle the climate? Well, I don't know if you've noticed or not, but since lockdown, what has happened to the climate? Well, industrial activity has dropped by 70 to 80%. The number of cars are not polluting on the roads. The planes not polluting the skies. The factories not polluting. The environmentalists are very happy about this situation. As are the Agenda 21ers, the Greenies. There are some positives to this that are enabling some people with great power and resource to buy into this. It's not all evil. It's just about a perspective. And the reason I'm trying to paint this picture is to say, well, it's maybe time to stop fixating on them, But anyway, let's go on to what they're doing at the moment. So I believe that what's happening at the minute is this lockdown is, first of all, seeing how many Agent Smiths can be activated. Second of all, seeing how many people are willing to comply so easily, and obviously it is building its way up to total control using a techno digital ID system. We all see it coming. It's already there. Bill already resigned from Microsoft to work on it, on his ID 2020. He's already on it. Thanks, Bill. Not. But, the question is, what are we doing? What are you doing? What am I doing? Not to oppose them, but to live. To live within our loves and our interests. To embrace our sovereignty in that way rather than living in response to them. Now, we're going to have solutions for them in a minute. But anyway, I want to finish my point. I'm moving on to the next point of positivity. Before I'm ready, I need to say what is happening with this stage of lockdown. So I believe that what is happening right now is a talk was given many years ago about revolutionary action. Wow, what a great sound. Revolutionary action. Wow. And he would say that in the years gone by, the working classes would feel the need for revolutionary action before the middle classes, because they would notice that the incumbent powers had either lost their grip or were acting beyond the remit really that was afforded them, really. And the working classes would try to organise and gather and bring revolutionary action, but they wouldn't have the resource or the wit to pull it off. And so they would need to enlist some of the middle classes with their resource and connections to then make something happen. And it would take some time because the middle classes would be buffered from the pressures and the conditions that the working classes were already feeling at that point. And of course, I'm sure you can see what I'm going to say now. So of course, the working classes have been gathering in numbers and have been trying to cry out in numbers for the last 15 or 20 years. and the middle classes have been buffered from the manoeuvres. But of course, what this guy said was that something would have to happen that would allow and enable the wealth of the middle classes to be eroded and decimated without them being able to do anything about it. So then they would be on the same playing field as the working classes, and then a move for a larger level of control could take place. Because if you think about it, to make a one world government happen, there are going to be lots of wealthy, powerful, interested national forces within many nations around the world that would resist a one world government. You know, just the individuals. And it's not about nationalism. It's about access to influence. It's about access to authority. It's about being able to speak to your decision makers in your home tongue, in your home language, to be able to drive to the place where decisions are made, and to appeal and to contest and to protest and to be involved. And the further removed from your doorstep you make that, the more difficult it is. The EU is a great example of that. You know, already we have invisible people that nobody can get to about these decisions because it's a second tier of governance. You introduce a global governance beyond that, and these people will be utterly inaccessible for bringing about decision-making change. So there are many intelligent people that would see that and would have resource, and they would mobilise to resist it. So something would have to happen. A swift move would need to be made that would allow all that to be milked off, and they wouldn't be able to do anything about it. And this, my friends, is what this lockdown is about. It's not about the bug, although the bug is convenient, and the bug will keep coming back because it is going to enable this thumb-screwing action following the almighty graph over successive periods over the next year to erode the wealth of the middle classes and their power, so that they will not be able to resist when the international control grid comes in. Sounds hopeless, doesn't it? I am not a man of hopelessness, I'll tell you that, people. A different tune is coming from me, I'll tell you, because this is great stuff for people like me, because this is what I came here for. We knew it was coming, people. It means the game is about to kick off. It's kicked off. The game is afoot. We just had to get over the shock of the change in chapter, that this is what it looks and feels like, and now is the time to take charge and be positive, which those who are students of my gender work will know means to keep going despite how you feel. That's what it is to be positive. It's to take charge and to keep going on purpose, alive and vibrant despite how you feel. That's right. So anyway, that's what is being invited here as part of it. But anyway, so what we're seeing is an absolute attack on the wealth of the middle classes. That's why this inappropriate lockdown has been happening. You will notice that the working classes are being somewhat buffered by this, by having 80% of salary. I mean, obviously some are excluded, because if you're new self-employed, you're not covered. You know, if you've got a lot of undisclosed income, then you're not covered. But otherwise, working classes are being buffered either by still being able to work, or by being able to have some of their salary compensated up to, I think it's 30k. So you'll see that actually it's only people in income brackets above that that are really being absolutely assaulted here with the side story of the bug. Doesn't mean the bug isn't there and it's happening. Yes, it's a variant of the flu, we know that, but this overreactivity is to crash the global economy and to erode the wealth of the middle classes, because, as you've already seen, the stock markets are crashing. These businesses, these thriving businesses, cannot run. They're not allowed to run. And then these people who run these businesses have high rents and mortgages, and with the amount of salary cover they're getting, cannot afford those high rents and mortgages, which means that they will soon not be able to pay either the bank, which is fine, but it's their landlord. So all these very wealthy middle class property owners of high-end properties will not be getting the expensive rents, because their middle class people will not be able to be paying them, because their savings are about to get cashed in and then dwindle. So the point is, many of them have already started to crash. Some can survive the next few months, but that's just going to be the first turn of the thumb screw. We'll get let out for a bit, as per the graphs, and then there'll be another reason to lock down, and now everybody's shown how responsive they will be to that level of fearful response to the bug. that that they'll be willing to do it again. And the thumb scratching will continue until those that could have acted now will be unable to. Because the resource that you've got now, my wealthy friends, will not be there in a year's time. Not under these conditions if your businesses can't run. And that's the real purpose of this. Now, of course, there's all the other questions around, the bug itself, we'll get onto that. But first of all, I want to finish that point. Middle class wealth is what this lockdown is really about. And activation of Agent Smiths. So, I want to say one more thing about the power of the spell, to be honest, because as many of you will already know, coronavirus is a family of viruses that give rise to things like the common cold, as well as SARS, as well as MERS, as well as, COVID-19. And the test that's going around cannot select for which of those I am led to believe. There isn't a specific COVID-19 test that is readily available. It's only intensively available, which means that we theoretically have people that are dying with with a bit of the cold, and it's being attributed to COVID when it's actually coronavirus. And I don't know if you remember, a few years ago, there was a coup that got pulled off where an everyday object became an object of fear. And that everyday object was a bottle of water in an airport. And all of a sudden, the most everyday thing in the world, a bottle of water, the most everyday liquid there is, water, became an object of fear in the context of this place. This establishment, this airport. And then, you can even drink your water at the security guard. Say, look, I'll drink it. And he'll still take it off you. Because the thing was, water has become a thing of fear. And what's amazing about what's happened with the corona is, of course, that now what we have done is we have made the most everyday thing there is a bit of a sniffle, a bit of a cold. We've made it the object of ultimate fear. People are hiding in their houses. They're wearing masks in the space of a week. For a variation on the cold, people. I mean, it's a staggering level of reactivity to one of the most everyday things there is. I'm looking for what's beeping at me and trying to make it stop. But, to be made afraid of one of the most everyday things there is, the common cold, the symptoms of the cold, to be so reactive to it, absolutely staggering so quickly. But maybe there's something deep in us historically from knowing that this is what happens when pestilence moves, and maybe there's something in our ancestry that goes back to ancient villages where the streets would be empty during times like this by people voluntarily doing the same thing. But it's about the appropriateness of it, and as I've said already, this is actually about the attack on the middle class, not the bug itself. And the bug itself is now becoming a mechanism. This is that power of the spell. It's exploiting people's fear of not just death, but also of sickness, of the unseen, of the microscopic. And this has really been blown up into such great proportion that people are showing that they're willing to give up everything. They're willing to give up living because of their fear of dying. They're willing to give up life because of their fear of a nasty cold. And look at this. This is what, this living by an AI decision and being so fearful of death coming to our elderly and our vulnerable is actually an anti-life decision. That's actually what makes it evil, is that it's an anti-life decision. We're asking all of the living to not live, the children to not play, the abusers to stay, the abused to stay with their abusers, the workers to not join in work, and the celebrators to not join and celebrate, for lovers to not see each other and family members to not see each other out of the fear of a few dying. That is evil because it is anti-life. It is selfish. It is selfish of the most aged and the vulnerable to ask all of the living to not live to this degree, to give up so much. If you ask me, it's a selfish decision. Now, I know that comes across as a bit different, but I am looking at this as a living intelligence, not an artificial intelligence. I am looking at all the graphs, the graph of well-being, the graph of prosperity, the graph of children's wellness, the graph of social cohesion, the graph of mammalian need for contact and interaction, the mammalian need for love and to be with our needed ones. These are all deeply linked to our mood and well-being and prosperity, and these are under the greatest attack they have ever been under in the history of our species by this very it's like the ultimate spell that's taking deep fears and perceived authority and weaving them together in such a way as to enthrall the planet. It's a stunning organic effect. Even though this may have been prophesied, even though this may have been predicted, what we should realise is that those visions were not causal. They weren't saying what the cause was, they were saying the result. But the implication was there was a single machinator giving rise to this outcome, whereas really the way I see it is there's a number of organic threads. It's like the seeds of this disaster were sown long ago, and it was just a while before this natural collision of fear and authority and such like came together, with a little bit of evil mixed in there as well. So yeah, this is an anti-life decision, folks, and hopefully that's out there in the open now. So where do we go from here? Well, we're going to move on to, let me just check my little list points I wanted to make. Feels good to get this off my chest. I've been brewing this for a while, people. I've recorded 4 times and discarded every one, but this time is not. This is not getting discarded. This one's going out. Okay, so onwards. Right, it's time for solutions, people. It's time for the good. It is time. Let me just check. Is it time? Have I covered all the bad? We're doing the good, the bad, and the ugly here. Okay, dun 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 dun. We're about to get to the good. Bum ba bum ba dum dum dum. About time, 'cause I'm in the mood. Bum ba dum ba dum dum dum. Enough of the doom and gloom. Yeah. Enough focusing on these fools. Yeah. Stop focusing on these fools, people. It's an enthralling story. It is designed to take away your attention. And as my great teachers, the Toltecs, would say, your attention is your most precious resource, because 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, something has your attention. And what you are telling the universe, the great goo, the great life we live in, what you are telling it when you focus on something is, I think this is important. And life is saying to you, oh, my wonderful child, you think this is important? Oh, well, let me keep it going for you. Please, let's take our attention off these buffoons. So, on to solutions, my friends, on to solutions. All right, people, it is solutions time. Okay, we just didn't know. I don't know whether they're just going to be left with this screen, this paused screen with the green folder to look at, but anyway. Yes, okay, I'm back. On to the positives. Yes, sorry, I shouldn't be mentioning the folder. We are changing our tune. We're changing track. Why? Because we must. We must, because, people, we are at the juncture, a massive juncture here. And I think this is why I've taken so long to be able to come round and reach out to you, is because I realised I had my feet in 2 camps. And I realised that part of me knew this was coming and didn't mind, because it's meant to be. This civilization is self-destructing, and it's of its own volition. It's collapsing from within. The rising infertility, the rising lack of creativity, the lack of direction and vision and purpose. The increasing, withdrawal from actual habitat, living in techno bubbles, disconnected from the real world. This civilization's time has come. And this is really good. It's really good. That's why this happening is good, because we knew it was coming. And if that's the case, then it means that things are about to really get moving. But it does mean also that things might be tricky for a while. But here's my issue, people. is that despite the fact that I know all that I've said to you in the last hour about these moving parties, you know, and about the fact that there is evil moving, and the fact that there are players moving in ways that don't care about abused being left with the abuser. They don't care about your kids not getting to play with each other. They don't care, these people. They just want their power. They just want their legacy. They just want they want this story to be their story. They don't care about your story. I care about your story because I want all of us to be thriving. And that's where my solutions come from. They come from that place. And I see a great world on the other side of this blip that we're in. I see the other side of the movements of these individuals that other people have almost made godlike with their projection of them as some kind of monolithic Illuminati or elite. They're not elite, they're just people with resources, honestly. So anyway, I want to be positive about this. No, here, I'm sorry, I'm beating around the bush. Let's get to the point. Okay, people. Now is the time to choose what story you think is going on. That's the solution here. And some stories have fuel that will last for different durations. The people that believe this is just a change for a few weeks because of a bug, that fuel will run out in a few weeks. The people that believe that this is a move for totalitarian control, that fuel will last until it happens, and then they'll realise, well, so what? I knew it was coming, so what? I didn't have another vision or plan. But those that believe that this is the great turning point of a civilization and a species, those who came here knowing that great change was afoot and that this was a great adventure, and that there may be disturbance and there may be suffering and struggle, but there is great change for the good afoot. Those people will have a fuel that can see them through. And I realised in the work that I've done with my one-to-one clients and with the men in the woods in recent months that the thing that can take a deed, a small action, and transform it from a paltry, withered manoeuvre into an act of great power, of mythic power, is the story that goes with it, the story that you bring, the story that you hang on to. And we're at a juncture point, people, of which story you are choosing. And if you continue to focus on the deeds of these people as being against you specifically rather than on your own positive direction, then I'm afraid to say that you are appearing to choose a story of fear. It's an enthralling story. It's a thrilling story. It's an engaging story. It's enchanting. It's no less fixating than the corona one that other people are like moths to a flame around. And what I've realised is that the foot in two camps I had was that I had a foot in that fear story because I had felt some fear. And I could see the truth of these people moving, and I felt, fear in response to their power and their resource when I felt myself to be lacking. But then I forgot that my foot in the other camp is that I'm a believer in the great spiritual transformation of our species, the great awakening, the great transformation. I'm a great believer in that, and I've been so quiet about it and so muted. And I've realised I've had to change my tune. I've got to change my tune to be more on that, because do you know what? I am not afraid. This is the great time ahead. And so I want to share with you my solutions rather than my reports. So, the test I believe that we are under right now, my friends, because let's remember, regardless what these people are doing, there is always a lesson for the good in there. There is always a challenge for the good, and for us that are here to ride this through until the end and to be well and thriving at the other end, here is what I think is on offer right now. Okay. So, a corona. What is a corona? Okay, well, if you look at the sun, when there is a total eclipse, the corona is the part that you can still see. It's like the aura. It's the bit around it, the field around the sun. And For years I've been doing space work with people saying humanity's going through a space initiation, we need to become better aware of our boundaries, we need to know when we are in what is happening in our space. And funnily enough, we generally become aware really quite sensitively of when people come into our space at around 6 to 8 feet away, about how far away people are now being asked to stand with social distancing. And in a way, this coronavirus, this social distancing is giving us each our corona. It's giving us each our own space around ourselves to find what's there. Either the work we've not done or the work that we have. In a way, we need to be skillful with our space bodies, as in that's the field around us, our corona field. We're actually super sensitive there. And in fact, I have always been sensitive to people being in my field. And actually, until I learnt to take charge and handle my state more, people being in my field, i.e. within 6 to 8 feet, would actually make me a bit agitated and anxious and cause me to behave in kind of perfunctory or otherwise agitated, spasmodic ways because of me trying to deal with the fact that they were in my space and I could feel it and feel what was going on for them, and yet I couldn't be in control of that and how it was making me feel. And it took me a while to master my state for that. And in a very real way now, all of you people who were like that, all of you people who didn't realise that that was the same for you, that you would be anxious or agitated when people would come into your space, well, you have now been given your space. You have been given your space to stand in and to shine in and to spread out in and to breathe deeply into and to take up fully. And show life what a healthy cell you are in amongst all these sick and dying and demented cells, not demented, lost cells that surround you. We are being given, as I said at the beginning, we're being dropped into the world that is the consequences of our choices, and we are being given our space to just be in. That is the spiritual challenge of the now. And those that have done their work will find that there is a beautiful energy in the land right now. There is a beautiful, amazing, deep, deep quiet with all that isn't moving, all the engines not running, all this industry not happening. There is such a beautiful, deep stillness in the land. It's exquisite. There's such goodness there. It's delicious. Delicious. And if you can't feel that, then I would suggest that maybe you are in a high, you've caught the spells, you've been whirled into a high state of excitation and agitation by having your attention taken to all these bait points and missing the gift right under your nose, which is to gather yourself in your space. To tap the deep quietude, to find the resource to ride through this. Now, those that have not done their work will be flapping and flailing, as many of the cracked and anxious faces that I've seen around, because they're being deprived of the very mammalian thing of contact. And many codependent and unwell people need contact to shore up their worth issues and their inadequacy issues, and they will be very much feeling all that now, and if not now, then soon. So there's going to be a massive challenge ahead for people to be all right in their own spaces, and that is the challenge. This is the graduation of the space initiation that we have been in for the last, I would say, 10 plus years. And so we're being given our coronas to stand and shine in, and so that is what I invite you to do. Take up your space. Show the world what a healthy cell looks like, because in a body, if we were to say that there was one human body and we were all cells in it, the thing that happens, the turning point, is when healthy cells who aren't sick start to get influenced so much by the sick cells around them that they themselves become sick. And I hope that's not going to happen to you. Breathe deeply into the space of your own corona, the space of social distancing that's been given around you. Tap deeply into the quietude in the land and smile at the goodness that is moving, because despite the evil moving on the land, good is moving too, and good is the victor in this story, people, not the blooming totalitarian lot that half of you lot have been focusing on up until now. It's good at the other end of it. Most of you lot have got God wounds and Jesus wounds and spiritual wounds of kinds. That's why you can't clearly vision that world on the other side of the totalitarianism. You know, you need to heal that wound, people. Heal that wound so that you can tap into a story of hope and joy, and your hearts may sing and be glad at this time, knowing that change is afoot. So that is what I think is the challenge for us, is being in our own coronas. That's the gift. And so now to solutions. All right, people, I have some solutions for you. I am not a reporter. I'm a solutions person. I'm an ideas person. But I don't have the resource to implement them, as those of you who know me know. But here are my solutions for you, and what I want to share with you, my beautiful, amazing, beloved, living beings on this amazing earth at this good and amazing time. Do you know what? Even talking about the corona enables me to breathe more deeply into my own. Take up the space that is mine. I ask you to do the same. Breathe in deeply, take up the space that is yours, tap into the deep quietness in the land, and be glad that the story is about to change and get so interesting and so exciting, because these are the times of great change. And that is why it's so important to choose your story. If your story is one of totalitarianism and end, then I wish you well in the realization of your story. You know. But I don't think it's going to end well. And this is where I have to reveal my hand and my cards, people. Because I am a believer that the good is going to prevail in this, and that there's a great vision for a leaner, more awesome humanity off the other end of the seeming mayhem, tunnel, birth canal, pinch moment that seems to be ahead of us. Could we call it a tribulation? Perhaps we could go so far as to call it a tribulation beginning. Could we call them signs of the end? Well, yes. But not the end of everything. Just the end of a chapter in the story. The story continues. The story goes on, and it's a glorious tale indeed. But you've got to choose which story you are in. But you don't have, you can use some of my solutions without being on the same story as me, but the rest of them, you're going to need to be on the same story as me to use them. But I'll give you the one, first of all, that is for everyone. Because most of you followers, not followers, I don't have any followers, most of you listeners will know me from my activism work with the People's Public Trust back in the old days of law activism and standing in the courts challenging the state. Those were the days. Working class power challenging the state. Loved it. Didn't have the clout or the money to take the court cases though. But as was told at the time by many, the People's Public Trust, the organisation I formed to enable and empower people to challenge agents of authority and agents of state about the humanity of service they were giving to the people. It was about the public trust that people placed in public servants to have the well-being of the community as their highest personal priority. Well, people, if ever there was a time for the People's Public Trust, now is the time. I am willing and able to roll back out the People's Public Trust for anyone who needs access to the training, which there isn't much. It's just about understanding how to say you are an agent of a body that monitors public officials for the level of humanity of service that they are giving to the community in fulfillment of the trust that the public have placed in them to do so. Using the master title that belongs to us as employers of the public servants, we go in as master observers, and the People's Public Trust affords clipboard, badges, methodologies for people to approach agents of state that may be overstepping the bounds of their power and behaving in inhumane ways. It also enables us to, my friends, take on agents of state who are behaving in ways which are to the detriment of the community, but in a way that they cannot hide behind limited liability. We basically use trust law, and we do them for breach of trust, where they have breached the trust that we placed in them to have the well-being of the community as the highest personal priority. I'm willing to offer this vessel to tackle the injustices that may lie ahead, to enable and empower you to feel empowered in your community to act against the injustices you may see. But I will require those of you that have resource to make it available, because I do not. I can provide the methodology, I can provide the spell and the spelling, but while you still have financial resource, some will need to come forward to fund the court cases, to help people access the badges, to let people know this is available. The People's Public Trust can come back and do this. And as people said before, this, when it was running before, it was seen by some as being potentially the greatest thing to happen to the country since democracy itself, because it was a way of challenging agents of state who are hiding behind the diminished responsibility that limited liability affords when they were in positions of authority that did not warrant such diminished responsibility. So, my friends, that is a nutshell soundbite of the work of what the People's Public Trust is capable of. It is immediately available to roll out, because it is simply a matter of a few simple methods and an easily downloadable and printed set of badges and questions. What's required is people to help administrate, people who are willing to help fund if real court cases are needed. If this lockdown continues so long and they ban exercise outside, you know, it might be acceptable for a short period based on the graphs, but if the deaths don't match up, then maybe we will need a breach of trust case as a means of exercising our authority as the people, because people are milling around saying, well, what do we do now? What do we do now? I am telling you now that a breach of trust claim is a valid way of taking this forward. I have another reserve legal tool as well that I'm reserving for even worse predicaments than this. I'm not even going to name it right now, but it is even more powerful than a breach of trust claim. But these are solutions, people. They will work, but they need you on board. They need your resource, your time, your energy, your promotion, your money. You know, and if you're willing to get behind, to do what they did, which was to cast a spell behind Corona to get everybody on board, well, I'm offering you a solution, the People's Public Trust and the mechanisms. You're welcome to get on board. You're welcome, you know, to invest and help build up a reserve so that if we need to act, then we can. I'm not going to spend your money on something else. It's for this. It's for pushing back if we need to. So there's solution number one. Okay, I've got more solutions. Right, so that's the solution for the immediate on-the-ground challenges people may be facing at times when injustice may be rising. And it will work. It has been tested in the past. It works. So people that want to know what to do, that is what to do. What needs to happen is people need to be willing to get behind an idea and to put their resources into it, because that is what has enabled us to be in this pickle in the first place. So I invite you, I implore you, please be a champion of this, because the more people we can get behind this as soon as possible, the sooner we have a cohesive unit that is able to respond to the needs in the community that may arise as potential injustice might rise. So that's solution number one. I also have another solution, which is, okay, so people, that is, so anybody interested in that, I'm in the middle of reactivating the People's Public Trust domain name, but the People's Public Trust has a Facebook group. Have a look for People's Public Trust. It's administered by me. There's a couple of them out there because other people copied the idea. But please have a look on Facebook for the People's Public Trust, and message me through there if you want to help. In fact, you know what? Just email me. Which email address? Okay, email to Darren, DARREN, at alternativeanswers.net. Email there if you are willing and able to get on board with the People's Public Trust and help rally to make something happen that we can all do, even as disconnected nodes. We can still use this and make this work, people, I assure you. So there, I you know, there is a solution Okay, next up is I don't like Facebook. I don't like them having our thoughts and our conversations. I don't like their bombardment and their policing. I don't like the trolling. I don't like the policing, the fact-checking, the bombardment and the propaganda. It's just getting too much. It's a horrible place that doesn't make me feel good when I'm on it, and I don't come off it feeling good. Oh, there I said it. Goodness me. So guess what? Again, for almost a year, I've actually been sitting on my own social network, and it's really good. It's just like Facebook. The problem was, the reason I didn't launch it was it's tied to my school, you see, and I wanted to launch them at the same time. My school is offering my work on gender awareness and obviously other spelling related stuff, self-development stuff. Those of you that know my stuff know what they're about, so I wanted to run them in tandem. My men's stuff as well. But sadly, I've got kids, I've got other things going on. It just meant that it just hasn't happened. But the network is ready, and so I wish to make it available so that we can start to share our thoughts in a place that isn't policed and isn't metadata scraped. A free speech platform where you won't be fact checked and you won't be policed unless you're a bully. I don't like bullies. But you can come and share your thoughts, join in conversations. There's forums for long-form conversation, as well as groups, just like Facebook, for specific subject conversations. You've got walls, you've got profiles you can share. There are albums, but I'm kind of limited on the capacity on the albums, folks. But the point is, it's all there. I am inviting you, but not to come and repeat Facebook, and not to come and be on the fear train. It's time to change our tune, people, and get on the love train, and get on the hope train, and get on the positivity train, and get on the feel-good train. And just because those other people are moving and their moves are effective doesn't mean we can't move, and our moves can't be effective too. I appreciate you may not have known a direction or had a method before, but I am offering exactly that to you here, this day, New Year's Day, as we face this unprecedented intervention by state that has inserted itself between lovers and family in perhaps its ultimate divide and conquer manoeuvre. I'm not saying that is what they're doing with it, but if they are, these actions I am suggesting are preventative and resilience gaining. That's the point here, so that at least you have something to be a part of that feels like it is doing something to counter or to move in a different direction, but one that is at least a direction rather than just milling around and visualizing no real outcome or without any real steps to take forward. So my network is willing to receive your goodness. We'll have a little corner for your fear, but I refuse to let it dominate this new space, people. If you come in here talking about these globalists that I've already been mentioning, I want you to be referring to them as the powers that were, not as the powers that be, not as elites, something else. And obviously I don't mean to police your speech before you even come in, but I'm just trying to give you the spirit with which I would like you to walk through the doors. So join me over at nativereservation.one. That's right, nativereservation.one, because I have a native reservation about things happening in the world. I am a native man. This planet is my reservation, and I have reservations. I question the motives of some of the exercise of authority around me, and this space has been created for us natives to hang out in. Ones with a hopeful and positive vision of the future, but with a desire to connect with other creative, visionary like minds. Coming over to nativereservation.one, people, you'd be very welcome. So that's my second solution, is I am offering you a place outside of Facebook that you will not be policed on, and you're not giving your data to Google or to Facebook or to, all of those technocrats. That's what they're called. The technocrats will not have your data there. The other objective with inviting you over there, people, is, as another solution, what these people have done with the spell they have cast is a thing I call reality tunneling. And what they have done is they have taken your attention of millions of people, billions of people, and focused them on this corona thing, using the combination of authority, belief, etc., 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 in this amazing spell, and vroom, lensed everybody to change the world by moving their attention in a different direction. And what I would like to do, and I'm telling you up front, as to why I'm partly inviting you over, is over on nativereservation.one you will be able to access my school, the Living Words University. That's livingwords.university, where you can learn about all my visionary plans for the future. You know, it doesn't mean that you can abandon your own, it's to dovetail with your own. I think you'll be excited at the things you might see there. They're very different, you know, very, very different, not like you'll find anywhere else, I promise you that. We have cutting edge gender theology, language evolution, really exciting mental upgrade stuff. Whoa, really juicy. That is going to be there at the school, but that's not why I'm mentioning it. Why I'm mentioning it is that there will be experiments that you can join in to help us vision and harness the power of our collective attention, where we, the awakened and awakening, with our more impressive manifesting power than these others, where we harness our greater capacity on one or more things, as in these are the experiments, to help tunnel into a better world. But by doing it, realizing we must find a point of agreement, and that is the great experiment I will be inviting you into over on there, so that we can genuinely get to a different outcome, spell it out, agree it, and that way move towards it in the same way that these people have moved for their power. If you have indeed envisaged a benevolent and hope-filled and loving and humane future for humanity, then I invite you to direct the lens of your wonderful hope-filled attention into some of the projects and experiments over on Living Words University and the nativereservation.one. And I assure you all of a benevolent and gentle use of your precious attention to direct it towards that exact same vision of what lies beyond these insidious actions to derail our world. But let's remember, the point is, I'll get on to my point in a moment actually, just to summarise. So I have those solutions to offer you for your on the ground injustice. The People's Public Trust is already proven, it will work, it's easy to roll out. Solution number 2, a place to share thoughts and converse and discuss concerns and solutions over on nativereservation.one. To study about how we can spell a different future and in fact already take our minds and our energy into new spaces by changing how we spell, changing how we use our language. You can get all that over on livingwords.university, where I will also share with you the great secret of something that we could all agree on that would allow us to truly transform this world, even beyond what coronavirus has achieved, way beyond even that, into the world of our dreams, by understanding how we can harness the power of the word, the first word, to potentially do that. And that will be the most heartfelt, beloved thing that I can offer any of you, that I have been hiding all these years, as I stand to try to take up my corona, as I stand to try to take up the space that is mine, that has been given to me, to no longer hide, to no longer shy away and stand in doubt. As these others are moving with confidence for their power, so should each of us do the same for ours. And I know that my solutions are not necessarily for the many, but for those that hear the potential for them, I invite you, go and look at my testimonials, go and look at how people have experienced what I've offered in the past, over on darrendeoji.com. You can see testimonials there. My channel, Alternative Answers, on YouTube, you can see testimonials there as well from recently. I only say that because I'm not into dictatorships, I'm not seeking to be a leader. I'm not seeking that. I'm seeking to come for those who hear the worth in what I'm sharing and in the direction that I'm going, and I want to come this way. I'm here to enable and empower people that resonate with what I'm sharing. So please, People's Public Trust, nativereservation.one. You can go there and register now. Living Words University will be available soon. And my final point is that, and this is where I have to, be a bit more honest. As I've already said, I'm a believer. I think this is the final move, the final reckoning of this Babylonian civilization. It has peaked in our times, and I have loved it dearly, and I have grieved and grieved for the civilization that I loved so much as a child, but I too have wished for its end, with its rising infertility and its lack of vision, that I admit. And I admit to believing that no matter what I have done in my life, I consider myself an intelligent individual, and I have tried so hard to look at all the data, all the evidence, everything around me, to try to shake off my sort of religious upbringing. And while I've managed to shake the influence of religion, I have not managed to shake the sense of this changing time as being potentially the revelation, the apocalypse, the great turning of a civilization as one morphs to become the seeds of a new one, as it has run its course. And from that place, people, this is so good, I can't even begin to tell you. We need to get into this space of, no matter what seeming darkness is unfurling around us, to realise this is the narrow tunnel of the great reckoning, and we need to grab onto our hope. That's my story anyway, the hope that, and it's not just hope, it's belief. And it's not belief because I read it in a book or because somebody told me. It's because it's deep in my bones. And the data does back it up. And that doesn't mean a self-fulfilling prophecy has happened. And it doesn't mean the prophecy made it happen. It means that the series of variables that could give rise to this situation could have been seen. I can see them. I can see the threads. I can see it's plausible that this is an organic condition we find ourselves in, not a machinated one. And it's based on that I have my hope and my belief and my faith. And not only that, it's based on my feeling as I drop into the deep quiet of the now. If I drop into the goodness moving, I'll tell you now, there is so much power moving beneath the surface, people. There is so much change brewing for the good. But it does involve a big transformation, and I think now is the time of the reckoning of a particular story, and that story is the one of those who have built their houses on sand and those who have built it on rock, and those who have built it on sand, those who are clinging to all the little sub-stories within our civilization and within the past. If, their wealth, their businesses, if this was their identity, then that house of sand is possibly going to collapse, and then with it in the coming times. But those that have built themselves on truth and rock and honesty, look within, my friends, because you will find deep goodness and resource and all rightness in the world right now. And I invite you to breathe deep and let that fill your corona, let that fill your space. Be a healthy cell of hope and possibility in these trying times. And don't let the negative spelling of the propaganda get to you. So this is just my first sort of splurge about Corona and about the change that we find ourselves in the lockdown. And I really feel for everybody who are in blocks of flats and can't get out and things like that and literally can't get around. But now is the time where we are finding ourselves in the consequences of our decisions, and we must sit with that. That is it. We must sit and be with what is true and whatever is moving for us, because it's just the truth right now. And people's traditional ways of venting have all been removed, so there's all these guys going to be sitting at home with charge brewing that they can't vent, and all these women that are maybe stuck in dealing with a guy that's stewing, or maybe they're stewing themselves. For people that are struggling, please get over to nativereservation.one or reach out to me, because learning to take charge in such situations and handle our states is something that I can help with in the sort of one-to-one services that I offer, or maybe I could run a webinar, but I will do it only in response. If you're a couple that's struggling or an individual that's struggling, reach out to me, and if there is a need there, then I can always put on a webinar for some support tools for handling the intensity of being cooped up together, because it's quite an unnatural situation for us to be cooped up like that. But anyway, I feel like I'm just going on and on now. I have made my points, I hope, mainly that the how has such a powerful spell been cast, what is it really about, and what is the good in it, and what are the solutions in there. And I hope you have found and heard some news and something a bit different in what is being shared here. And let me just see here. I'm making sure that we are we are recording. That's good, thank goodness for that. And meanwhile, I wish to thank you for your very precious attention. I know how valuable it is. I know what a powerful resource it is. Thank you for it. I've covered a lot of points in this. I hope there has been some juiciness in there, some referencing, some interest. And I will be doing other modifications of this particular, because this one I remember was said was aimed more at truthers. I will be doing some that are aimed more at New Agers and spiritual people in a bit, and I'll do another one that's more aimed at secular and science people as well. But the main juicy bits, I think, are in this one from my truther friends. I hope there was some value in there for you. Please get off the fear, get onto the love, stop talking about what the others are doing, and use this time that you have left, use the time you've been given, take up your space, get on with the things around you in your life, and get on with the things you can influence rather than the things you're concerned about. Stop being against the stories of these people and start being for a story, whatever you choose. Use this time well. Who knows how much more you have left. And maybe some of you I will see over on nativereservation.1. Maybe some of you I will see at the People's Public Trust. Maybe some of you I'll see at the Living Words University. And maybe some of you I will see at darrendog.com. And if not, then please check out my brightpresence.co.uk and build up your health resilience using my own recipes of some amazing supplements that you literally cannot find anywhere else. I assure you of that, and they're really good and they work too. So that is my share for today, my beautiful, amazing, dearly beloveds. And I am only just getting into gear because I'm just trying to get out. I'm trying to shift from my own fear track into my hope and love track, because this is actually game on. This is what I came here for. This is like woohoo. So yes, you may be feeling the pinch, so are we all, but now is the time to come alive.